welcome to Preacher to Teacher. My name is Terry, and as you can see, we are radically changing the format. In conversation with my former and current students, they felt like the whole channel could use a totally different approach. So we are shifting to a vlog slash podcast format. And one of the first ones to mention this idea is one of my former students, Coleman. So really an awesome opportunity to begin with him and to have a conversation with students and teachers about the classroom so that maybe students can learn more about a teacher's perspective and teachers can learn more about a student's perspective. And instead of just teachers talking to teachers, we might all be able to learn from each other. So Coleman, thanks for joining me.
Of course, of course.
Awesome. So let's begin. You're about a year removed from the classroom. So what are some good memories that you have from your high school days?
I remember a lot of interactive memories, a lot of talking with over the lunch table with my buddies. I remember a lot of talking with my teachers about either what we were learning or just about normal day to day things. I remember a lot of the school functions, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Just a lot of anything where I had major interaction with another. Well, that's kind of school, isn't it? Major interaction with
Mm-hmm.
other individuals. But there was a lot of moments where where I was very much in social interaction.
Sure. Now, teachers are taught differentiation and trying to make sure that we teach students well. What are some of the things that teachers did that you remember in class versus things they did that you don't remember?
So the big thing that I've in looking back, I remember a lot of times where we had in class discussion,
Mm-hmm.
lots of application of what we were learning. My Spanish teacher had a very unique way of doing that through stories,
Mm-hmm.
through stories where we would learn and use the Spanish in a very in environments in which it would naturally occur.
So you'd act out the story.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Or in turn, we would learn Spanish where it would be Spanish, day-to-day Spanish. Not
Mhm.
like just learning a bunch of words, but learning words that can be used in phrases that are used commonly in places where Spanish is spoken.
Good. Good. Any other illustrations of that stick out to you?
Other illustrations of that are like in a lot of my English and writing classes. I was a lot of our major days were discussion days where we talked about whatever we were talking about was and interacted with each other. The ideas, we bounced those ideas off of each other, and it furthered our understanding.
Cool. And you had mentioned, I believe, Macbeth when we were talking with each other?
Macbeth. Macbeth is something, like, I remember the talks about Macbeth. I remember the talks about Frankenstein, those books, that literature, just because of how it was structured so that we could talk to each other about it and what we thought about, how we interpreted certain themes from those stories.
Cool. So we are taught from the teacher perspective that whoever's doing the talking is doing the learning. So it sounds like you're affirming that.
Yes.
Okay, cool. What are some challenges that teachers need to be aware of that students are facing these days?
So mainly, I would say the main issues are social issues of kids not really fitting in all the time. I didn't struggle with that a whole lot, but I could definitely see where some of my classmates struggled with that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my classmates did struggle with making friends, and it's kind of rough because it's hard. The format of school is good. It has its pros and its cons.
Mm-hmm.
Switching from class day to day, you get fresh people in each class, but sometimes it also removes you from the people you're normally talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to adapt in that sense socially.
So what are some things a teacher can do in the classroom to help with that social anxiety that students might have?
I think a big part of that is to encourage, talking between students as not a forced thing, but more of an optional thing.
Okay.
That if a student feels comfortable, they may share something with another student or with the class.
Okay.
And that would be, it furthers the understanding, furthers how a student accepts and receives information.
Okay. So is if a teacher says find a partner, is that good or bad?
That I would say that that's a 50-50.
Okay.
I would say for people who are socially anxious, it's hard because people who are socially anxious won't. I mean, they'll kind of go into like a tense, almost fight or flight with anxiety because they're like, who am I going to choose? Like, who do I know this person? You know, but
Mm-hmm.
it can also be very good when those people who are already well socially just pick somebody who isn't, and they are able to open that person up more.
Okay. Good. Excellent. Um, as you look back, are there any horror stories that you experienced that you'd say, yeah, I this would be an example of a thing that we probably shouldn't do, the
Hmm.
teachers shouldn't do.
I will say I was blessed to not have been in a situation where I felt super anxious. I think the only thing that really presents great anxiety for me was doing presentations,
Mm-hmm.
especially by myself. Now, presentations with groups, I love doing that, especially when I had a good group who were all working and all passionate about
Mm-hmm.
what we were doing. But I think solo presentations, that's one of the things where it's very difficult for somebody to stand up in front of a whole group of people, like public
Sure.
speaking
Yeah.
almost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people just aren't cut out for that. And I would say that would
Yeah.
probably be one of the things that are, oof, you
Well,
know.
that still rates pretty high on the fear spectrum for most
Yeah.
human beings. So
Oh yeah, I personally I'm not that great of a public speaker either.
that's all
So
good. So, last question. Anything last thing you would say? I wish teachers knew this.
um man, that I would say the big thing that a lot of students, I would say most students share is that we feel very comfortable with teachers who keep things real, who are very honest
Mm-hmm.
about what's going on. If there's something going on in the classroom, that's if a teacher is willing to say, "Hey, let's talk about this. This is something. This is clearly something that's upsetting some people, or it's creating a distraction. Let's talk about. It. Let's resolve it." That those teachers are the teachers that I have heard and I have experienced. I would say gain the most, not just respect from students, but the most admiration.
Cool. So, we didn't want this to be one directional,
Right.
obviously. So, I told you that I'd give you a chance to ask the teacher questions so that
Yes.
students could also, you know, engage this material as
Right.
well.
Right.
So, what questions do you have for me?
So I'll start off with a bit like just a kind of basic introductory for as a teacher when you come home. What do you look back on in the day that makes you say that was a good day?
Yeah. So, a student who overcomes, like what you're talking about, the social anxiety, a student who um, is loved and cared for by a student that doesn't have anxiety, a student who doesn't give up on themselves. My wife was telling me today about a student who she's been working with that made huge leaps and bounds in their testing. And, testing anxiety is a real thing. So
Yes.
when kids experience that kind of thing, when they believe in themselves, when in partnership with their teachers, realize new goals and objectives for things they've never accomplished before, and that makes for a good day. So,
Is there anything like you talked about in teachers in partnership with students? Since you're kind of new to it, what have you found to be ways that you've been able to really create that bond between teacher and class that has led to those sorts of successes?
well, as you know, I want kids to know that they matter,
Right.
and I think one of the challenges with social media is that most students present their best selves
Mm-hmm.
to their classmates, and so we judge the best self of the other, like, up against the full self of ourselves. And so it's really hard to feel good about yourself when
Right.
you're comparing the best of everybody else against the entire reality of yourself. It's demoralizing,
Mm-hmm.
defeating, and you live in that every single day. The very framework of how those platforms are constructed pull you back in.
Right.
I remember the first time I was asked, "Do you have a streak?" And well, that meant something very different when I grew up than when y'all,
Yeah.
right? So um, it took me a minute, and when I realized what it was, I'm like, no, my wife and I would be the one to have a streak, but we text instead of snap.
Right.
So um, the reality is that that impacts my students a lot. So I want them to know that regardless of what they think about themselves, regardless of what anybody else thinks about them, they matter. And I remind them of that often. It's on my walls. It's a part of who I am and what I teach, so that there's never a dumb question. There's never no, what are you thinking? There's never can I ask a stupid question? I tell them there's never a stupid question, right? So it's a way to make sure that students feel valued, cared for, loved, and that they know that they matter. So that's how I do it.
All right. So my next big question is: you were a pastor beforehand,
Mm-hmm.
aptly named as the channel is called Preacher to Teacher.
Sure.
So how has being a pastor beforehand and what you did as a pastor affected how you taught that other teachers may
Mm-hmm.
not have viewed? Like your perception is different. So
Yeah.
how has your perception been altered in that way?
So I've when you go through the shadow of death with people, when you uh, work with grieving families, when you go through the highest joys with families, you experience a wealth of emotion. And so you know that in a classroom, every 50 minutes a new set comes in, a new set of students comes in, and with that new set of students comes in an entirely different set of burdens and hardships and adversities and family trauma and arguments and hopes and dreams that are trying to be fulfilled, unfulfilled. And every single day, those individuals come into my room, and we're expecting them just to drop all that stuff and get on board and learn.
Yeah.
Um, that's tough, right?
Yeah, it
So,
doesn't really work out that way.
yeah, and so to be oblivious or not care about any of that is, in my opinion, a huge mistake. So I had one student this year who I could see she was everything in her power to keep from crying. And so I put a sticky note. I don't know what it is, but I hope it gets better. And I gave her a candy bar. And I find out like 6, 8 weeks later what it was that was going on in her life at that time. And small acts of kindness and care go a long way in letting students know that we stand with them. I didn't ask for personal information. It wasn't my personal information to get. It's hers. And so I was shocked that I ever found out what it was that was going on, but she eventually did share with me what was going on. So you never know what a student is going through, and so that then impacts how I engage with discipline. I don't take quote unquote bad behavior or rule breaking as an affront to my authority. My first assumption is that it's an expression of their uh, the challenges or stresses of their home life. And so if I don't react aggressively to what some might perceive as a challenge to a teacher's authority, now they have an opportunity to back off because I'm not pushing hard.
Right.
Now, if the student just violently in my face, which
Right.
rarely happens. I think I know teachers who have given as many referrals in a day as I've given in a year. There's a way to uh, minimize conflict, and so I think that's probably the biggest thing coming into a classroom, knowing that these students are bringing so much today that is so heavy, and then I can reframe how it is that I engage with them.
Uh, so this is you're about to finish off your second year of teaching.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, first year teaching, everything was fresh, everything was new. How have you overcome any challenges or anything you didn't expect in your second year of teaching?
Sure. So, you can only do what you know, and there's a lot you don't know your first year. One of the fun parts about teaching what I teach is it's not a year-long course. The stuff I teach is only a semester long, and so I've gotten to teach every course now 4 times. And so it's like, whereas if I was a science teacher, it would take me 4 years to do what I'm doing in a 2-year period. And so I really feel bad for my first year students because there's so many tools that I use today to help students engage with the learning, to have that interaction that you were talking about with the material that is so much better. Learning the 30 court cases that you had
Right.
to learn, I do that so differently today, and so I don't really teach the court cases. They teach themselves the court cases,
Mm.
and they do it over a 5-day period. They got a 93 as a class on the test. So, it's if they're the ones that are doing the teaching and talking and learning, and I'm just facilitating the space for that to happen, it makes for a much better learning environment. And I just didn't know all that stuff my first year.
Right.
And so, I look at my current students and I'm thinking to myself, man, what am I getting wrong now, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's just the whole part of growth and learning. It's
Right.
a growth mindset or a defeat mindset. And if you choose to have a growth mindset, you learn and grow, develop, implement new strategies, and you change them as they cease to work, and you just keep moving
Yeah.
forward.
Trial and error.
Yeah.
Just trial
Hmm.
and error. I think the last thing that I've got is there anything other than you matter, which
Hmm.
you can expand on that if you wish,
Sure.
but other than that, what is there something you want to leave your students if they've learned anything at all, if they need to know anything at all from leaving your class, what would be the one thing you want them to know?
Other than they matter? Other than that?
Other than that, maybe. If you want to expound on you matter, I mean you can, but I was giving room
Yeah.
if there was
So,
something else.
obviously, as a government and economics, I want them to know how to be financially stable,
Mm.
and I would even say financially wealthy. If they'll do what I taught them and what they discovered in class, they're going to be wealthy if they do that.
Right.
So I'd love for them to remember that. I'd also love for them to celebrate their God given constitutional rights.
Mhm.
So if they remember those and celebrate those, that would be awesome. But at the end of the day, if all of that is born from a place that celebrates that they matter, the person across the table from them matters, their enemy matters, their friends matter, and even to have an opportunity to say outside of the classroom in this context that that's rooted in the person of Jesus Christ, then that's a fun opportunity. So whether they
Amen.
believe in him or not is secondary to my wanting them to know that they matter. And so uh, I think that would be a fair summary.
I
So,
agree. I think
so
you've communicated that well.
cool. Awesome. Well, thank you, Coleman,
Of
for
course.
joining me, and thanks for coming again to record this because the
Yes.
first time didn't work. So
Second time.
that's hopefully second time is the charm. So,
Yes.
and to all of you who have stuck around through this, thanks for joining us. If there's something you would like us to talk about, something you would like students to talk to teachers about, something you would like teachers to talk to students about, would you let us know in the comments section? And if you like this new framework, please hit the like button and click the subscribe button, and you'll get the content. I've got a list of students that want to do this.
Yeah.
And so if you would like to be involved in that content, don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks for joining us today. And as you've already heard, you matter, and what you do matters. Thanks for joining us.